3 days before the wedding, I got a text from my sister, Haley. I'm still waiting on 2 last gifts. Don't even think about showing up without them. Then my mom chimed in. If you were truly family, you'd buy her everything she wants? No. Questions asked? My dad agreed. My brother Jake nodded along, probably thinking, finally, someone's setting clear expectations for once. My uncle added, real family always comes through when it really counts. And my aunt seconded that, saying, some folks just don't know how to express love properly. I didn't say a word. Instead, I canceled 5 gifts I'd already purchased and immediately froze the catering payments I'd been making. 2 days later, my phone blew up with 29 missed calls. Haley was absolutely furious when she heard the news. My name is Kimberly, and I'm 28 years old. My sister Haley is 25, and she's always been what you'd call the family's golden child. Growing up, Haley could do no wrong. If she desired something, it appeared. If she messed up, someone else somehow took the blame. If she faced a problem, our entire family sprang into action to fix it. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who always prioritized family. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, or at least I thought I did. But over the years, her sense of entitlement had steadily worsened, and our parents, Jake, and our extended family just kept enabling it. I was beyond tired of being the family doormat, and I believed her wedding would be different. Surely on her big day, everyone would simply focus on celebrating her happiness, right? Boy, was I wrong. The drama began about 6 months before Haley's wedding to her fiancé, Garrett. Haley had always envisioned a massive, elaborate wedding and was determined to make that dream a reality. The issue was that neither she nor Garrett had much money saved. Haley worked part-time at a boutique. Garrett was still finishing his master's degree while working as a teaching assistant. But instead of scaling back their grand vision or waiting until they were more financially secure, Haley decided, our family should simply pick up the tab. Initially, the requests seemed reasonable. Mom and Dad offered to pay for her wedding dress, which was a kind gesture. Jake volunteered to handle the music and DJ services, leveraging his industry connections. Our Uncle Tom said he'd cover the flowers, and Aunt Linda offered to pay for the photography. I was asked to manage the catering, which seemed fair enough. I had a good job as a marketing manager and could certainly afford to contribute. But then, the requests grew more specific, more expensive, and far more demanding. Haley didn't just want catering, she wanted a particular high-end company that charged nearly 3 times what local options would have cost. When I suggested more budget-friendly alternatives that would still be delicious, she had a complete meltdown. Kimberly, this is my wedding. She sobbed dramatically. I've dreamed of this day my entire life, and you want me to settle for some cheap, basic food that will ruin everything? Mom immediately leaped to her defense. Kimberly, sweetie, Haley only gets 1 wedding day. Can't you just make this work? You know how important this is to her? Dad chimed in with his usual line. Family comes first, Kimberly. We all need to do our part. So, I agreed to the pricey catering. It was going to cost me almost $8,000, a significant chunk of my savings, but I told myself it was worth it too. Make Haley happy and maintain peace. Oh, but that was only the beginning. Over the next few months, the gift requests started rolling in. Haley created not 1, but 3 distinct wedding registries. 1 at a high-end department store, 1 at a luxury home goods boutique, and an online one packed with designer items and electronics. She sent our family a group text with links to all 3, adding a note that read, just so everyone can coordinate and make sure I get everything I need for my new life with Garrett. I skimmed through the registries and nearly choked. The cheapest item was a $150 set of dish towels. Most items ranged from $300 to $800, with some furniture, pieces, and appliances running into the thousands. The total value of all 3 registries combined easily exceeded $15,000. I selected a few items I could afford. A nice stand mixer for $400, set of dishes for $350, and some fancy sheets for $200. Along with the catering I was already in. For $8,950, which was honestly more than I had ever spent on anyone's wedding, including close friends. But Haley wasn't satisfied. A few weeks later, she sent me a private text. "Hey, I noticed you only bought a few small things for my registries. I was really hoping my maid of honor would get me some of the bigger items I really need, like the dining room set and a new laptop." I stared at my phone in disbelief. The dining room set was $3,200 and the laptop was $2,800. She wanted me to spend another $6,000 on top of what I was already paying? I called her to discuss it. "Holly, I love you, but I'm already spending $8,950 on your wedding between the catering and the gifts I've bought. I think that's a pretty generous contribution." "But Kimberly," she whined, "you make so much more money than everyone else in the family. It's not fair that I have to go without the things I really want just because other people can't afford them. You could easily cover the bigger items if you wanted to." "It's not about whether I can afford it," I tried to explain. "It's about what's reasonable to expect from family members. Most people spend maybe $100 to $200 on wedding gifts." "Most people aren't my sister," Haley shot back. "I thought you'd want to do something special for me." The guilt trip worked as it always did. I ended up buying the laptop, though I drew the line at the dining room set. I was now in for over $11,700. Even after getting the laptop, Haley's demands continued to escalate in ways I never could have predicted. She began complaining that Garrett's family wasn't contributing enough, and somehow that became my problem to solve. "Kimberly, it's so embarrassing," Haley told me during one of her frequent phone calls. "Garrett's mom brought over this cheap tablecloth set she got from Target. She acted like it was some amazing contribution. Meanwhile, you've bought me all these beautiful, expensive things. It just highlights how unequal the support is. Haley, that's not really fair to Garrett's family. They're doing what they can afford. But it makes me look bad. What will people think when they see the reception setup and realize that half the decorations are cheap while the other half are high quality? It's going to look so mismatched and tacky." This conversation led to yet another request. Haley wanted me to quietly replace Garrett's family's decorations with more expensive versions so they wouldn't feel bad about their contributions, but the wedding would still look cohesive. It seemed like a thoughtful gesture at first, till I realized it was going to cost me another $800. "Just tell them you found these items on sale," Haley suggested. "That way everyone saves face, and my wedding looks perfect." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The alternative was listening to Haley complain for weeks about how her wedding was ruined by mismatched decorations. Then there was the issue of the wedding dress alterations. Haley had found her dream dress at a sample sale, which was great. New, since it was significantly cheaper than buying it new. However, the dress needed extensive alterations to fit properly and to match Haley's vision. "The seamstress says it's going to cost $1,200 to make all the changes I want," Haley told me tearfully. "Yeah, but Mom and Dad already paid for the dress itself, and they say they can't afford the alterations too." "Kimberly, I can't walk down the aisle in a dress that doesn't fit properly. It will ruin all the photos. Can you maybe modify your vision a little to make the alterations less expensive?" "Kimberly, this is my wedding dress. Can't compromise on how I look on my wedding day, please. I'm desperate. You're the only one who can help me." I found myself agreeing to pay for the dress alterations. Another $1,200. My total was now $13,750. Around this time, Haley also decided she needed a professional makeup trial, a hair trial, and manicure appointments leading up to the wedding. Since these were essential preparations, she felt they shouldn't come out of her personal spending money. "I'm already stressed about so many other things," Haley explained. "The last thing I need to worry about is how I'm going to pay for all these beauty appointments. And Kimberly, you know how important it is for me to look perfect in the photos. These aren't luxuries, they're necessities." The beauty appointments cost me another $600. I was now at $14,350. But the worst part wasn't even the money, it was the complete lack of appreciation. Haley never thanked me for any of these contributions. Instead, she acted like I was simply fulfilling my basic obligations as her sister. When I mentioned to Mom how much I was spending, hoping for some acknowledgement of my generosity, Mom just said, "That's so sweet of you, honey." Haley is lucky to have such a supportive sister. No suggestion that maybe Haley was asking for too much. No recognition that my contributions were extraordinary. just an expectation that, of course, I would continue funding whatever Haley wanted. The breaking point almost came 5 weeks before the wedding when Haley decided she wanted to upgrade the flowers. Uncle Tom had already paid for a beautiful floral arrangement, but Haley saw a picture in a wedding magazine of a more elaborate setup that she absolutely had to have. "Kimberly, look at this picture," she said, shoving her phone in my face during a family dinner. "Doesn't this look so much more romantic and elegant than what Uncle Tom ordered? This is what I've been envisioning all along." Uncle Tom looked hurt. "Haley, I thought you loved the arrangement we picked out together." "I do love it, Uncle Tom. It's just, well, it's not quite the vision I have for my special day. The upgraded flowers would cost an additional $2,200. Haley looked at me expectantly, as if it was obvious that I would cover the difference. For the first time, I hesitated. Haley, Uncle Tom already made a very generous contribution. Maybe we should stick with the original plan. Haley's face fell, and her eyes filled with tears. "Kimberly, I can't believe you would want my wedding flowers to be disappointing just to save some money. This is the most important day of my life." The guilt was overwhelming. I could see Uncle Tom feeling bad about his inadequate contribution. I could see Haley getting upset, and I could feel the eyes of the entire family on me, waiting to see if I would step up once again. I covered the flower upgrade. Another $2,200. I was now at $16,550. The most frustrating part was that Haley had started treating my contributions as if they were somehow less valuable than everyone else's, because they came so easily. When Jake complimented the expensive flowers at one of the pre-wedding events, Haley said, "Oh, those are thanks to Kimberly, but you know how she is with money." "How I am with money?" I asked. "You know, you're just really good at making it work. It's not as big a deal for you to spend money as it is for other people." I was stunned. Haley had somehow convinced herself that spending $16,000 wasn't a sacrifice for me because I had a good job. Never mind that this represented months of my disposable income. Never mind that I was delaying my own financial goals to fund her wedding. In Haley's mind, my contributions didn't count as much because they came from someone who could afford it. This attitude became even more apparent when Haley started comparing my gifts to those from other family members. When our cousin Rachel gave Haley a $75 picture frame, Haley gushed about how thoughtful and meaningful it was. When I gave her the $2,800 laptop, Haley said, "Thanks. This will be useful," and moved on to opening the next gift. A laptop that cost me more than a month's rent received less enthusiasm than a $75 picture frame. I started to realize that Haley valued the thoughtfulness and sacrifice behind gifts, but she had convinced herself that my expensive gifts required no sacrifice and therefore no thoughtfulness. In her mind, I was just someone with deep pockets, who could throw money at problems, not someone who was making real financial sacrifices to support her dream wedding. This realization made all the subsequent requests even more infuriating. Haley didn't see me as a generous sister who was going above and beyond. She saw me as a convenient solution to her financial problems. When Haley asked me to cover additional wedding expenses 2 weeks later, specifically transportation for out-of-town guests and upgraded accommodations for the wedding party, I began to understand that there would be no end to the requests. Haley had an unlimited vision for her perfect wedding, and she had identified me as the person who would make that vision financially possible. The transportation and accommodation upgrades cost me another $1,500. I was now at $18,050. But what really pushed me toward my breaking point was Haley's reaction when I mentioned that I might not be able to afford a vacation for myself later that year because of all the wedding expenses. "Oh, Kimberly, you can take a vacation anytime," Haley said dismissively. "I only get one wedding day. Besides, you'll probably meet someone soon and want to do a couple's trip anyway." The casual dismissal of my own financial goals and personal life was breathtaking. Haley had become so focused on her own wants that she couldn't see how her demands were affecting anyone else. I started to see that this pattern had been developing for years. Whenever Haley wanted something she couldn't afford, the family looked to me to provide it. When Haley's car broke down 2 years ago, I had co-signed for her loan. When Haley wanted to take a vacation with her friends but couldn't afford it, I had loaned her $1,200 that was never repaid. When Haley's apartment deposit was more than she expected, I had covered the difference. I had been so focused on being the good sister that I hadn't noticed how I had become the family's automatic solution to every financial problem Haley encountered. And Haley had become so accustomed to my help that she now saw it as her right, rather than my choice. The guilt trip worked as it always did. I ended up buying the laptop, though I drew the line at the dining room set. I was now in for over $11,700. The situation reached a new level of absurdity when Haley decided she needed not just one, but two separate bachelorette celebrations. The first was supposed to be a classy afternoon tea party for the older female, relatives, and family friends. The second was the Vegas trip for her younger friends and bridesmaids. "I can't have Grandma Ruth at a Vegas bachelorette party," Haley explained, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world, "but I also can't deny my college friends the fun Vegas experience they're expecting. So, I need both events to make sure everyone feels included." The tea party, which I was expected to organize and fund as the maid of honor, ended up costing $400 for venue rental, $300 for catering, and another $200 for decorations and party favors. Haley insisted on expensive imported teas and pastries from a boutique bakery because Grandma Ruth will be able to tell the difference, and I want her to feel special. But the Vegas bachelorette party was where things really got out of control. Haley decided she needed a bachelorette party in Las Vegas, not just a local celebration, but a full weekend trip for her and her 6 bridesmaids. Since I was the maid of honor and the one with the most disposable income, I was expected to organize and largely fund the entire trip. The weekend ended up costing me another $2,500 after covering Haley's hotel room, most of her meals, and her portion of the various activities we did. The other bridesmaids chipped in what they could, but several of them were still in college or early in their careers, so the financial burden fell mostly on me. But what made the Vegas trip particularly galling was Haley's behavior during the weekend. She acted like a celebrity, expecting everyone else to cater to her every whim. When we went to dinner at an upscale restaurant, Haley ordered the most expensive items on the menu, and then suggested that we split the check evenly to keep things simple. When I pointed out that this wasn't fair to the other girls who had ordered much less expensive meals, Haley pouted and said, "Fine, Kimberly. You can just cover my portion, since you're already handling most of the trip expenses anyway." During one of the shows we attended, Haley complained loudly that our seats weren't close enough to the stage. She kept saying things like, "I'm the bride. Should have the best view," till I eventually paid to upgrade our tickets another $300. At the hotel pool, Haley decided she needed a private cabana for our group, even though we already had perfectly good lounge chairs. "I want this weekend to be Instagram-worthy," she explained. "My followers are expecting to see some amazing bachelorette content." The cabana rental was $250 for the day. By the end of the weekend, Haley had managed to turn what should have been a fun celebration into a performance of her own importance, with me as the primary financier of her ego trip. The worst part was the constant stream of social media posts Haley made during the trip, presenting herself as someone living this luxurious lifestyle without any acknowledgement of who was actually paying for it. Her captions were all about how blessed she was to have such amazing friends who loved her enough to make her bachelorette party perfect. No mention of the fact that I had covered about 80% of the weekend's expenses. By this point, I had spent $22,000 on Haley's wedding, and we were still 4 weeks out. Then came the bridal shower. Since Haley had so many friends and extended family members, she wanted a large, elaborate shower with expensive decorations, premium food, and high-end party favors. Once again, as the maid of honor, I was expected to handle most of the planning and costs. Another $1,800. I was now at $23,800 in total wedding-related expenses, which was more than I had spent on my own car. But Haley seemed to take it all for granted, never once thanking me for the financial sacrifice I was making or acknowledging that I was going above and beyond what any reasonable person would expect. The bridal shower itself was another exercise in Haley's escalating expectations. She wanted to invite 45 people, including several of Garrett's female relatives, whom she had met only a few times. When I suggested that maybe we should keep the guest list smaller and more intimate, Haley became upset. "Kimberly, this is my only chance to celebrate with all the important women in my life," she said. "I can't leave people out just because of money that would hurt their feelings." Of course, Haley wasn't paying for the event, so it was easy for her to be generous with invitations using my money. The party featured a candy bar with imported chocolates, $200, mimosa station with premium champagne, $300, custom party favors that Haley had designed, $250, and a professional photographer to capture every moment, $400, Haley insisted. On the photographer because she wanted beautiful professional photos to remember the special day. During the shower, several guests commented on how elegant and expensive everything looked. Haley basked in the compliments, accepting praise for the beautiful event, without ever mentioning that I had planned and paid for everything. When someone asked Haley how she had managed to put together such a lovely party, Haley said, "Oh, I just have great taste and I'm really good at finding vendors who share my vision." The casual erasure of my contributions was becoming a pattern. Haley was perfectly happy to take credit for events and purchases that I had funded, while simultaneously taking my financial support for granted. Friend Jessica approached me privately. "Kimberly, I just wanted to tell you that this was such a beautiful party. Haley is so lucky to have you as a sister. I can't imagine how much time and money you put into making this perfect for her." It was the first acknowledgement I had received in months that my contributions were significant and appreciated. I almost cried right there in the bathroom of the country club. "Thank you, Jessica. It really means a lot to hear. Haley mentioned that you're also paying for the catering at the wedding. That's incredibly generous of you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without breaking down. "Just between us," Jessica continued, "I think Haley sometimes doesn't realize how lucky she is. She's always been the type of person who expects things to work out perfectly. She doesn't always think about what other people are doing behind the scenes to make that happen." Jessica's observation was more accurate than she probably realized. Haley had grown up in a family that solved her problems for her, and now she had extended that expectation to her wedding planning. She genuinely seemed to believe that beautiful, expensive things just appeared in her life because she deserved them, not because specific people were making financial sacrifices to provide them. Instead, she just kept asking for more. 2 weeks before the wedding, Haley called me in tears. "Kimberly, I have terrible news. Garrett's parents just told us they can't contribute as much as they originally promised. We're short about $3,000 for some of the final wedding expenses." I should have seen what was coming next. "I was hoping you could help us cover the shortfall," she continued. "I know you've already done so much, but I literally don't know who else to turn to. You're the only one in the family who has the resources to help." I took a deep breath. "Haley, I've already spent over $23,000 on your wedding. I think I've contributed more than enough. But Kimberly, we're a family. I would do the same for you in a heartbeat. Please, I'm desperate. I can't have my dream wedding ruined because we're short a few thousand." The manipulation was so obvious, but it still worked. The thought of Haley's wedding being ruined because I didn't help made me feel incredibly guilty. Against my better judgment, I agreed to cover the $3,000. I was now in for $26,800, but apparently, it still wasn't enough. 3 days before the wedding, I received the text that would finally break my patience. "Haley, hey, Kimberly, still waiting for 2 last gifts for my registry, the espresso machine and the silk throw pillows. Don't come to the wedding without them." I stared at the message in shock. The espresso machine was $1,200 and the throw pillows were $300. She was demanding that. I spent another $1,500 on top of the $26,800 I had already contributed. And she was telling me not to come to her wedding if I didn't comply. Before I could even respond, my phone started buzzing with messages from other family members. Apparently, Haley had shared her frustration about my lack of generosity in the family group chat. "Mom, Kimberly honey, if you were real family, you'd buy everything Haley wants without question. She's only getting married once, and these are the last few things she needs to complete her dream. Dad, I have to agree with your mother, Kimberly. Some sisters just don't understand their basic family obligations. Jake. Finally, someone setting proper expectations for once. Kimberly, you make good money, and this is Haley's big day. Just get the gifts. Uncle Tom. Real family members always come through when it matters most. Kimberly, Haley is counting on you. Aunt Linda. Some people just don't know how to show love properly. Kimberly, this is how you show Haley you care about her happiness. I sat in my apartment reading message after message from my family members, all of them criticizing me for not being generous enough, all of them acting like I hadn't already spent $26,800 on this wedding. The entitlement was breathtaking. But what hurt the most was the implication that I wasn't real family if I didn't continue to fund Haley's every whim. After everything I had sacrificed, all the money I had spent, all the stress I had endured to make her wedding perfect, they were questioning my love for my sister because I hadn't bought 2 more expensive gifts. I said nothing to the group chat. Instead, I spent the evening thinking about my relationship with my family and how I had allowed myself to become their personal ATM. I thought about all the times I had been taken for granted, all the times my own needs and feelings had been dismissed, all the times I had been guilted into doing more than my fair share. I was done. The next morning, I started making phone calls. First, I called the catering company. Hi, this is Kimberly Chen. I need to cancel the catering order for Haley Richardson's wedding this Saturday. I'm sorry, ma'am, but with less than 72 hours notice, we can't provide a full refund. The best we can do is 50%. That's fine, I said. Please cancel the order and refund what you can. Next, I called the stores where I had purchased Haley's gifts and inquired about their return policies. Most of them had 30-day return windows. And since I had purchased the items within the last 2 weeks, I was able to return nearly all of them. The laptop was the biggest return. Getting that $2,800 back felt like a huge weight off my shoulders. I also canceled the additional $3,000 I had promised to cover for the last-minute wedding expenses. I called Garrett directly to let him know. Kimberly, what's going on? Garrett asked, sounding confused and concerned. Garrett, I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I've been taken advantage of by this family for far too long. I've already spent over $20,000 on this wedding after returning some gifts. And instead of gratitude, I'm getting demands for more money and threats that I shouldn't come to the wedding if I don't buy more gifts. I'm done. Wait, what? Kimberly, I had no idea Haley was asking you for so much money. I thought everyone was just contributing what they could afford. Garrett, I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, but I can't continue to fund your wedding while being treated like garbage by my own family. The catering is canceled. The extra money isn't coming, and I won't be buying any more gifts. Garrett was quiet for a moment. Kimberly, I understand why you're upset, but the wedding is in 3 days. If you cancel the catering now, we'll need to figure out an alternative quickly. Then I suggest you talk to Haley about adjusting her expectations. Or maybe some of those other family members who think I'm not generous enough can step up and contribute. After I hung up with Garrett, I felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. I was anxious about the chaos that was about to unfold, but relieved that I had finally stood up for myself. I didn't have to wait long for the reaction. The next day, 2 days before the wedding, my phone started ringing nonstop. I had 29 missed calls by the time I checked my phone after work. The voicemails were a mix of panic, anger, and desperation. Haley's voice was shrill and hysterical. Kimberly, what the hell is wrong with you? The caterers called and said you canceled. Ow. Could you do this to me 2 days before my wedding? You're ruining everything. Call me back right now. Mom sounded like she was on the verge of tears. Kimberly, please, I'm begging you, don't do this to Haley. She's devastated. We can work this out, but please don't destroy your sister's wedding. Dad's message was angry. Kimberly, this is completely unacceptable behavior. Made a commitment to your sister, and you need to honor it. Fix this immediately. But it was Jake's message that really caught my attention. Kimberly, Haley is having a complete breakdown. She's been crying for hours, and now she's talking about canceling the wedding entirely. Garrett's family is asking questions about why the catering got canceled, and Haley doesn't know what to tell them. You need to call her back and work this out. I listened to all the messages, and then I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, the day before the wedding, I turned my phone back on to find dozens more messages and missed calls. But there was one message that made me smile. It was from Garrett. "Kimberly, I talked to Haley about everything you've been asked to pay for. I had no idea it was so much money. I'm horrified that my future wife and your family have been treating you this way. I've told Haley that either she apologizes to you and we figure out a way to have a simpler wedding, or I'm calling the whole thing off. She's been crying, but I think she's starting to understand how wrong this has been. Can we please talk?" Finally, someone was seeing the situation clearly. I called Garrett back. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Honestly, I'm pretty shaken up," Garrett admitted. "When Haley told me how much money you've spent, I couldn't believe it." Kimberly. "That's more than my parents' entire contribution to the wedding combined. And then when she told me about the text she sent demanding more gifts, I realized that the woman I'm about to marry has been acting like a completely entitled brat. Garrett, I don't want to come between you and Haley." "No, Kimberly, you're not coming between us. Haley's behavior is coming between us. I've spent the last 24 hours thinking about whether I want to marry someone who treats her own sister this way. The entitlement, the manipulation, the complete lack of gratitude. It's not the person I thought I was marrying. So, what happens? Now, Haley has agreed to call you and apologize. She's also going to call everyone who criticized you and make them apologize too. We're going to have the wedding, but it's going to be much simpler than what we originally planned. We'll order pizza or something for the reception. And Kimberly, if you decide you don't want to come after how you've been treated, I completely understand." An hour later, my phone rang. It was Haley, and she was crying. "Kimberly, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Garrett made me sit down and add up everything you've spent on my wedding, and I can't believe how selfish I've been. You've spent over $20,000 on me, and instead of being grateful, I just kept asking for more. I don't know what's wrong with me," I sighed. "Haley, I love you, but you've been taking advantage of my generosity for months. The fact that you needed Garrett to point this out to you instead of realizing it yourself is really concerning." I know. I got so caught up in wanting the perfect wedding that I lost sight of everything else. Kimberly, please, is there any way you can forgive me? Is there any chance you could still come to the wedding?" "Haley, I'll come too. Your wedding because you're my sister, and I love you. But things need to change between us going forward. I'm not going to be the family ATM anymore, and I need everyone to respect that." "Yes, absolutely. And Kimberly, you don't need to bring any gifts. You've already given me more than enough." The wedding day arrived, and it was actually quite lovely, despite being much simpler than originally planned. Garrett's family ended up ordering food from a local restaurant, and it was delicious. The decorations were more modest, and the whole event had a more intimate, personal feel than the elaborate production Haley had originally envisioned. But the best part was watching Haley's behavior. She seemed genuinely grateful for everything, thanking people for their contributions instead of demanding more. She spent extra time with Garrett's grandparents, who had flown in from across the country. She helped clean up after the reception instead of expecting other people to handle everything. It was like she had remembered how to be a decent human being. During her maid of honor speech, I kept it short and sweet, focusing on my hopes for Haley and Garrett's future happiness. But privately, I was proud of myself for finally standing up to the family dynamics that had been toxic for so long. After the wedding, things did change in my family. Mom and Dad both apologized for ganging up on me, admitting that they had gotten caught up in Haley's drama and hadn't stopped to consider how much I was already contributing. Jake was a bit more reluctant to apologize, but he eventually came around when he realized that his own future wedding expectations might need to be more reasonable. Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda took longer to come around. They seemed to think I had overreacted and that family members should always be willing to sacrifice for each other. But even they eventually acknowledged that Haley's demands had been excessive. Haley and I slowly rebuilt our relationship over the following months. She made a genuine effort to be more considerate and appreciative, and I made an effort to be more direct about my boundaries instead of just going along with unreasonable requests. Garrett turned out to be a great addition to the family. He had a grounding influence on Haley and wasn't afraid to call out bad behavior when he saw it. I think having someone in her corner who loved her, but wouldn't enable her, made a huge difference in Haley's personal growth. About 6 months after the wedding, Haley called me to apologize again. "Kimberly, I've been thinking about the wedding situation a lot lately, and I keep coming back to how horrible I was to you. You spent over $20,000 on my wedding, which is insane when I really think about it. Most people spend like $100 on wedding gifts. I was demanding that you buy me $1,500 worth of additional gifts after everything you had already done. Haley, we've talked about this. I've forgiven you. I know, but I don't think I've fully processed how entitled and manipulative I was being. The fact that I sent you a text telling you not to come to my wedding if you didn't buy me more gifts, that's sociopathic behavior, Kimberly. I'm honestly ashamed of the person I was during that time. We were stressed and caught up in wedding planning. People make mistakes. No, Kimberly, it was more than that. I had gotten so used to you always saying yes to everything that I started to see you as an unlimited resource, instead of as my sister who was making real sacrifices for me. That's not stress. That's entitlement, and it's not okay." It meant a lot to hear her take full responsibility without making excuses. The whole experience taught me some valuable lessons about family dynamics and boundaries. I learned that being generous and supportive doesn't mean being a pushover. I learned that sometimes people need to face consequences for their behavior in order to change. And I learned that standing up for myself, even when it caused short-term chaos and drama, was ultimately better for everyone involved. These days, Haley and Garrett are doing well. They've been married for over a year now, and Haley has continued to grow as a person. She's more mindful about money, more appreciative of other people's contributions, and more aware of how her behavior affects others. Our family gatherings are much more pleasant now that everyone understands there are limits to what people can reasonably be expected to contribute. When Jake got engaged 6 months ago, he and his fiancée planned a much more modest celebration, and nobody pressured anyone else to overspend on gifts or wedding contributions. I still think about that group chat where everyone criticized me for not being generous enough. Even after I had already spent $16,000, it's a reminder of how easy it is for families to develop toxic dynamics where one person becomes the designated problem solver for everyone else's issues. But I also think about Haley's growth and how she's become a more thoughtful, grateful person. Sometimes people need a wake-up call to realize how their behavior is affecting others. I'm glad I finally found the courage to provide that wake-up call, even though it was terrifying at the time. The 29 missed calls were definitely worth it in the end. Looking back, I realized that canceling the catering and returning the gifts wasn't really about the money. It was about respect. I needed my family to understand that I was a person with feelings and limits, not just an ATM they could guilt into funding their dreams. And you know what? They finally got the message. Update. It's been almost 2 years since Haley's wedding now, and I thought I'd share a quick update since a few people have asked. Haley and Garrett are still happily married and have grown into a really strong team. Haley has become much more financially responsible and has even started a small savings fund to help pay for other family members' celebrations, saying she wants to pay it forward after everything I did for her wedding. Jake's wedding last year was a much more reasonable affair. He and his wife planned everything within their own budget and specifically told family members that gifts were appreciated but not expected. It was actually more fun than Haley's wedding because everyone was more relaxed. Most importantly, I've maintained the boundaries I established during the wedding crisis. I'm still generous with my family, but now it's on my terms and within reasonable limits. I've never again been asked to spend thousands of dollars on someone else's event, and the family dynamics are much healthier overall. Sometimes you have to be willing to let everything fall apart in order to build something better. Those 29 missed calls taught everyone in my family a lesson they desperately needed to learn.